My name is Kara and I'm a home cook. Today I am doing a mini marathon meal prep in the kitchen. I overbought food for some projects and I want to make sure none of it goes to waste. So let's spend the afternoon knocking out as much as we can. During this time of year, I buy most of our groceries from Farm to People. Farm to People is essentially an online farmers market here in the New York City area. They do a really good job of sourcing high quality and local ingredients. I put an order in the day before, so let's just process some of that and some other lingering produce already in the fridge. Before we get into all of that, though, let's start with some easy stuff. I've been reading about creatine for a while now. It's a compound that helps support muscle growth and recovery. I've been working out a lot, and so I thought I would give it a try in my post-workout protein smoothies. I've purchased protein powder from this brand ProMix before, and I really like their products. They use very simple and this is always an overused word, but clean ingredients. But I hate these bags that the protein powder comes in because the powder gets inside of the zip and stops working. So I'm going to move it into an airtight glass container. These jars are from Amazon. I'll leave a link in the description. I have a couple. They're just a nice size for medium amounts of ingredients. I also threw in another protein powder from ProMix in my order. I really like the vanilla flavor, so let's also refill that container. And then let's throw a label on these. I really struggled with spelling protein right, and then the label maker ran out of tape, but we finally got there. I am not a huge fan of winter, especially here in the Northeast US. The redeeming part, though, is that it's citrus season. Even though we obviously don't have local grapefruits here in New York, I still take citrus season seriously via imports from California. And then for the rest of the year, I typically avoid international citrus imports just because of their environmental impact. I love the taste of grapefruit. I don't love to eat it raw, so I am just going to juice this one. And then I like to throw a couple of tablespoons of the juice into a plain seltzer. I then ran into a classic me problem, and that was not being able to find a lid for the recycled jar that I wanted to use. So let's move that into another jar with a lid I can actually find. All right, I have two squashes here. They are getting a little old. I have a carnival squash and a butternut. The butternut is starting to rot a touch, as you can see here, so let's process it. I'm cutting off both ends so that I have a stable surface to cut it in half, and then I'm scooping out the seeds. I am going to roast this butternut whole and then turn it into a puree. But for the carnival squash, I am going to just cut and de-seed it and then cut it into bite-sized pieces and roast. I am dressing the carnival squash in olive oil, salt and pepper, and this Kashmiri masala from Burlap and Barrel. I'll roast both of these on the same sheet pan with a silicone lighter and then pull the smaller squash pieces out before the butternut finishes roasting. Quick side quest here to wash and chop these scallions. I was lazy and threw them directly in the fridge yesterday without covering them up, so they are already a little limp. I'm going to process them now and have them ready to cook with for the next week. These are Weck jars, by the way, the 741 size. I bought the plastic lids, and the lids fit on this smaller size jar and the taller ones as well, the 743s. So they're really versatile. Again, I love these jars. Okay, I got 4 red potatoes from Farm to People. I thought that was a funny amount. These potatoes had a lot of deep eyes with dirt stuck in them. I had a hard time reaching it with the vegetable scrubber, so let's peel off those pieces. I just bought this Y style potato peeler from Milk Street after our potato peeler went missing and still can't find it. But this peeler is amazing. I'm so impressed with it. I'll include a link in the description. I like it too because you can buy replacement blades. So this is just going to be in my kitchen for probably ever. So I'm going to go ahead and dice and boil these. I find it so much easier to cook with potatoes when I've pre-cooked them like this, so that I can either roast them, get them really nice and crispy, or make a breakfast potato in the cast iron. I ended up doing just that for a few breakfasts, and then I used the remaining potatoes in a cabbage soup that I made a few days later. These beets were forgotten about in my fridge. I've shared before that beets are not my favorite, but I do like them roasted in small pieces and used in tacos. So let's go ahead and wash these and dice them into small pieces. I am putting them in this container with a clean paper towel to wick up any moisture. These will be ready for roasting in the next few days. I ended up roasting them for tacos. I did have a small amount that didn't fit in this Tupperware, so I'm going to make some space on that squash roasting pan and roast them for part of my lunch today. I used the same bowl from dressing the roasted squash, and I tossed these with olive oil, salt, and Kashmiri masala. Next, I am making the hammered mushrooms from Superiority Burger's cookbook. Superiority Burger is an amazing vegetarian restaurant here in New York in the East Village. Even if you're not vegetarian or vegan, you want to stop here on your next trip to New York. I recommend their tofu fried tofu or their veggie burger, and definitely leave room for their seasonal gelato or ice cream. These mushrooms are really simple, just dressed in olive oil, salt, maple syrup, and gochugaru, which is a Korean pepper flake. The recipe calls for button mushrooms, but I used a mix of shiitake and button. I know you're not supposed to wash mushrooms with water, but I just can't not. So I did that and then thinly sliced them. I was trying to reuse the bowl from the beets in squash, but I ran out of room. Once the squash was done roasting, I made room on the pan and changed the oven temperature and roasted these for about 25 minutes. I ended up using these mushrooms on a variety of things like rice bowls and some pita sandwiches. Quick stop to eat lunch. I made tofu rice bowl the night before. I'll link the video where I walk through this recipe and also link to the text recipe below. I warmed that up in the microwave and added those roasted beets, the sliced scallions, and some of burlap and barrels, herbs, and garlic. I also, of course, added a little sriracha. This is from Yellowbird. I really like the sriracha. I actually like it more than the hui fang. It's really sweet, which I think adds a lot of depth to it. Right, this is a really quick chore, but I bought these pita from Farm to People. The bakery is Angel Bakeries. I bought these because I wanted to test out a recipe idea, but I'm accepting that I probably won't get to that for a bit. So I'm going to cut these in half and freeze a couple. I left one out and ended up using it with my dinner that night. All right, the carnival squash is done. I am scooping these off the pan and putting them in a container. I ended up eating these over the next few days in a pita sandwich, on rice bowls, and just plain on their own. A little while later, the butternut was fully roasted. I am following a recipe from this great book called Freeze Fresh. It's a guidebook for using your freezer to preserve food, and it has so much helpful information. She recommends roasting squash like this, letting it cool, and then scooping out the flesh and pureeing it. So I went ahead and did that, and then I scooped it out into these silicone super cube molds. I don't use these very often, but I should. I will probably use this puree in a soup or maybe even a baking recipe in place of canned pumpkin. Okay, I am barreling through all of this produce. I love cabbage, and I especially love Napa cabbage, which is this Asian style frilly cabbage. I am going to make yamatsuki, or addictive cabbage. I am following a recipe from New York Times Cooking. I'll leave a link in the description per usual. This is a similar process to kimchi or sauerkraut minus the fermentation. So I'm cutting the cabbage into small pieces and then putting 3 tablespoons of diamond crystal kosher salt on it and massaging that in. It's very important that you use diamond crystal, not Morton, or it will be too salty. So you let that sit and soak in the salt and then rinse the salt off, just like kimchi, and you make a sesame oil, garlic, and pepper dressing. This salad was amazing. I'm definitely going to make it again. I thought it could have been a little less salty, so next time I will try 2.5 tablespoons of diamond crystal. The recipe also explains that the raw garlic gets pretty intense as the salad sits, so it is best eaten on the same day it's made. I found that to be true, so I might try garlic powder next time and see if that ages a little bit better, but it is a great way to use cabbage and so good as a side or on rice bowls. I only used 1/2 of the cabbage here, and I cut up the rest and put it away in some Tupperware. A few days later, I used the cabbage in a turmeric and cabbage soup. That was super delicious. I'll leave a link to the recipe I followed in the description. The last thing I did this day was make a spinach and basil pesto. Earlier in the day when the oven was on, I roasted the walnuts, and then I washed the spinach in my salad spinner. Do you know that phrase, I hate writing but love having written? I feel that way about my salad spinner. I hate washing the salad spinner, but I love having spin salad, so here we are. So in the food processor, I combined basil, toasted walnuts, spinach, garlic, lemon juice, salt, and pepper. Instead of using Parmesan, I added nutritional yeast. I often do this when I make pesto because when I heat up the pesto, I don't want the cheese to melt and get goopy. I was planning on freezing some of this and likely using it in a pasta, so I prefer the nutritional yeast route. Plus, it makes it a little bit cheaper. I put some of the fresh pesto away in a container and then used it up over the next few days. I used it in a pita sandwich, and then a few days later I made pesto eggs, which is just frying an egg in pesto. For the rest of it, I put it away in one of those empty super cubes. When the squash and pesto were fully frozen solid, I popped those out and stored them each in some freezer bags. What a busy day! I really appreciated having all of these prepped ingredients and meal elements ready to go. It made cooking so much easier for nearly a week. So thank you for coming along with me today. I will see you next time on Home Food TV.